So now we look at Raphael. You see him in this engraving, a print, a portrait of him in the printmaking form. He was immensely talented. And in his time, he was ranked in the 3rd place. That would mean 3rd behind Michelangelo, #1, Leonardo da Vinci, #2. So up there in the top 3. And that ranking, I'm actually quoting a 16th century writer, Paolo Giovio, who said that Raphael attained the 3rd place in painting by virtue of his marvelous gentleness and alacrity, that's eagerness, of a talent quick to assimilate. Let's think about these words here. So his marvelous gentleness, what is the writer pointing to? Well, if you look at what the textbook has shown to introduce him, they start with these Madonna and child, Madonna and baby Jesus. And they're showing you how incredibly tender and beautiful these figures are. There's a radiance, there's a softness. You've already seen this at the very beginning of the class because Raphael painted the Madonna and the Goldfinch. So in both of these paintings, you see what the 16th century writer means by the gentleness, the tenderness. There's a soft idealism. And frankly, everything is just beautiful. The people are just pretty. And there's a way that Raphael, because of that idealized beauty, tends to feel like he's creating this marvelous world that's almost angelic. That is what Raphael does at his best. There's a little bit of a sense to my modern eye that can be a little bit too sweet. I mean, they're very beautiful, and yet this Madonna and child look a little bit like they're in an advertisement for a high-end organic shampoo for babies, a little nice soap. There's a quality of kind of the perfection being a little bit, maybe just a touch too good to be true, or at least less compellingly edgy as what we see in Michelangelo or Leonardo. And that was recognized in his time, that he's really good. But he doesn't quite have the same startling originality of Michelangelo and Leonardo. So if we come back to this quote, we see that the writer is giving him just a little bit of a backhanded compliment. You're great, but you're in 3rd place. And he's saying that Raphael's talent has to do with this eager ability to quickly assimilate. So Raphael will copy and absorb the lessons of great painters like Leonardo da Vinci. But this ability to copy is not actually an inferiority, because I'm going to talk about how at the time there was great emphasis on achieving greatness by being able to emulate. And emulate meant to imitate, but more than to imitate in a way that makes it your own, where you outdo almost, or at least you create a kind of a new statement from your source. And we can actually see that early on when he has trained with the painter Perugino. You will remember Perugino from the painting in the first paintings made for the Sistine Chapel before Pope Julius II. The painting of Jesus delivering the keys to St. Peter. Let me show you. So Perugino painted this fresco on the walls of the Sistine Chapel in 1480. And if we take a close-up, we can kind of see his capacity as an artist. So here's Perugino, the scene of Jesus Christ giving the key, the symbol of authority of the church, the Catholic Church, to Peter, who's considered the founder of the Catholic Church. So a very good scene to paint on the walls of the Sistine Chapel in the Vatican, the Pope's main residence and place of worship. So interestingly, if we're thinking about the role of copying and emulation, Perugino here is sort of copying his own painting. This is from 1503 to 04, and it's very close to his earlier painting in the Vatican. And so you see that Raphael on the right is painting the same scene and using very much the same general composition. Both are sposalizio, betrothal of the Virgin. So similar to the painting we saw with Giotto of the marriage of the Virgin. But what I want you to see is, if you are comparing Raphael to Perugino in a Paragone debate, can you see how much better Raphael is than his teacher? He's so good that his painting reveals the shortcomings of his teacher, actually. Because his teacher kind of lines everyone up without all that much spatial complexity, whereas Raphael creates a kind of spiraling movement, which is what we saw Leonardo do, and which he learned from Leonardo. So that's his talent, quick to assimilate. He sees right away how Leonardo's compositional structure is not a kind of flattened, basic, inert shape. It's full of complex interplay of projecting out and receding back, and movement in spirals. And look also at the one-point linear perspective. Your textbook authors used Perugino to talk about one-point linear perspective, but in this painting, he's really cutting corners. He actually has only 2 orthogonal lines. Compare that to the number of orthogonal lines that Raphael uses, which creates so much more of a sense of a deep ground plane plunging back. That is not the case with Perugino. You actually look and you think, wow, he's doing just enough to get the job done, but not with this kind of a absolute talent for the perfect mathematical structure that will make a profoundly believable world. And you see that with the architecture. In both cases, this is supposed to be glorifying classical Roman architecture with round arches, and yet Perugino's, again, looks a little bit like a cardboard cutout, as if this were just a kind of a stage set for a play, because he doesn't give you very much detail. He gives you kind of, again, the minimum to get by, whereas Raphael creates such an intricate, complex, perfect structure of arches leading back, looking at the decorative elements, the windows, the dome. Perugino cuts off the dome. So you can see why Raphael quickly announced himself as one of the great talents. And these paired marriage portraits of the husband and his much younger bride, these are a great example of that talent quick to assimilate, his ability to emulate Leonardo da Vinci. Because, of course, it's quoting the Mona Lisa, this portrait of Maddalena. And if we compare the two, I'm saying here, what evidence do you see of Raphael emulating Leonardo? So certainly he's really completely copied the pose of the body, the way the hands are draped one across the other, the way the torso is turning in that anatomical torsion, the way the face is looking out and seeming to respond to the viewer's gaze. And that, of course, is on one level breaking the conventional female portrait, which would have been in profile for an upper-class woman. What's different is the psychology. Maddalena, yes, looks back at us, but with none of the pleasure that Mona Lisa exudes. No smile flickers across the face of Maddalena. She's encased in piles of tightly buttoned, elaborate clothing, all of it gorgeously painted. Silks with brocades, amazing detail. And yet, Mona Lisa, in her subdued clothes, seems somehow more alive. She doesn't need jewelry. Maddalena has all sorts of expensive, elaborate jewelry on her rings and neck. Mona Lisa seems adorned simply with her pleasure and her intelligence. This is not because Raphael was a less imaginative artist. It's simply that he actually delivered the painting to the patron. So he knows that he must maintain the expected restrictive vision of female behavior. Madalena cannot in this culture seem to have any erotic pleasure of her own. She was legally the property of her husband, and she needs to look like a very expensive, very obedient little doll.